right, good morning, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Sandy Benavides. I'm your counselor coach with ESC Region 11. And today we will be taking a dive into ethics. I'm going to share my screen and come here and get us going. I apologize that the links were having trouble this morning. I'm not sure what it was or why it's doing that. I know Presley's looking into it. I do email everyone, so even though you get the link in the registration when you register for the event, I always, just as a backup, email you. And I emailed everyone, all 100 and some people that registered 2 days ago, last night, and then this morning again with some information. So I apologize that's having issues, but hopefully we can get as many of you in here and going. Make sure. Okay. Alrighty. And then Presley, can you just make sure, can we see this screen? I was trying to bounce back and forth. I can't. Okay, I'm still getting hit in my emails, so I apologize if you're emailing me now. I can't flip back over there and look. So we will, again, try to fix this next time. I'm not sure what happened. So ethics for school counselors. You know, there's been a lot of ethic trainings happening here and there. And so I've attended all of them, and I've decided, you know, let's make one for our service center. Let's get one for our people, because I know that it's hard to catch some of those. And some of the ethics one I got into, not everyone, you know, could make it into the session because they were just blowing up so quickly. So this ethics presentation is really just a gathering of a lot of Carolyn Stone work, Dr. Carolyn Stone's work. Those of you that know her, she's very big, a big leader in the school counseling ethics and ethics in general. And so pulled a lot of resources from her stuff, and I pulled a lot of resources from you know, everything that's out on ASCA, and as well as situations that I've been asked to consult and support. I always think that these ethical trainings are always so much better when we do it from a scenario-based approach. So I will do some slides of discussion in the beginning, and then we're gonna look at scenarios, and I'm gonna ask you some questions. I think I might have a poll. Let's see. Let me launch my poll. Okay, so part of, and this is a 2-question poll, part of what I'm trying to do is I'm transitioning to making these virtual trainings kind of more face-to-face, have that more face-to-face feel, is to allow you more opportunities to answer questions and be a part of it. And so part of this is from some work I do with morning meetings. Those of you that are in the SEL world know that, you know, that morning meeting is kind of that quick, let's see what our brain is thinking, let's think what our body is feeling. So, you know, these are kind of funny. And so I kind of wanted you to just take 20 seconds and tell me, what's your brain thinking right now, and what is your body feeling? And if I had to choose one right now, I would say, is it lunch yet? Because I'm hungry. I had 3 big trainings this week, and a couple of them had to be completely redone for virtual setup, and I just have not had a chance to really eat today. And so I am hungry. I am already thinking about lunch, and that's for sure on my mind, although I'm so happy to be with you all here. And then what is my body feeling? Y'all, it is feeling pretty exhausted. I think this is just going to be a heavy week. Some weeks are like that. And I'm just really tired, but maybe you're energized or excited or timid or content. You know, it's okay to just feel okay. Somber, gloomy, you know, it's kind of rainy and yucky again. So again, like maybe 5 more seconds, and then I'll go ahead and end this poll. All right, so let's see where we fell. Okay, so it looks like, yay, I'm glad to get another 1.5 credits in ethics. For sure. It's hard to get these ethic credits, and especially for my LPC people, you know, you have to stay up with the requirements. So definitely get that. And then what is my body feeling content? All right, most of us are just, we feel okay, and that's great. Thank you for sharing with that today. Let me close. Presley, is there a way for me to get it to stop? Get it off the screen?
Just click the X in the top right.
Oh, you know what? This is covering it. That's what happened. Got it. Okay. All right. So I did send you a couple of things. Remember I told you you're getting a little bit more credit. You're getting that 1.5 credit. I just know that so many of you needed that full 3 hours. And so I tried to accommodate you as best as possible. I sent you a couple of documents. First of all, the ASCA Ethical School Counselor Standards document. That's the first link you see here. I gave you another FAQ resource that ASCA has out, as well as your mindsets and behaviors. And I'll talk about how mindsets and behaviors play into ethics. I've taken kind of a little bit of a twist on that, but I think it's so important as we think about that moving forward. So just some nuances that you may not be aware of, but ethics are updated every 6 years. So if you're thinking, man, this is like the same document that I've seen since 2016, you are correct. You are correct. That document has not changed. It will change in a couple of years. I'm really curious to see all the changes that will happen and how COVID will impact ethics. I can imagine right now that virtual section in our ethics is like really short. I think it's going to grow tremendously based off, you know, what's happened over these last couple of months. Some of the things that we look at is, you know, what were the major changes between the last edition and the new edition? So think about it. The last edition was in 2010, and then we had, not sorry, the edition before the current edition was 2010, and then we have the 2016. And so as you can imagine, you know, it really beefed up virtual and technology related information, and also, you know, a lot of emphasis in that dual relationships. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. But for sure, technology was a big enhancement between 2010 and 2016, and rightfully so. 2008, you know, our first smartphones came to life. And so we saw massive changes to life, both positive and negative from that inception. And so just again, don't want to go too deep. So when I think about ethics, I don't only think about what is right and what is wrong, but I also see ethics as what should we be doing? How should we be comprehensively approaching whatever it is that we're doing? I think when we are wanting to do right by kids, ethics has to go beyond a right and wrong mindset. It's got to be that gray. It's got to be, am I doing what's best for my students? What should I be including so that I can say with confidence that I am doing my best here? And so ASCA has the mindsets and behaviors, and I love those. I use them very much like TEKS. You know, in the counseling world, we don't have TEKS per se. We have a few places like in the health curriculum, and I know SBOE is making some new places, but really as a whole, you know, when we design our guidance lessons and such, we don't have TEKS that we can always correlate to. And so our mindsets and behaviors are our TEKS, and we should be using them as such. And so these TEKS here, these mindsets and behaviors are actually what's recommended by ASCA to cover in any of our virtual instruction. And that goes across not just guidance lessons. This should be our academic content, should be embedding some of these concepts too. I say this all the time when I speak. Counseling is no longer the job just for counselors. It is in everybody's job. We have evolved in a way that it's all hands on deck, and we cannot limit this to one person or a small group of people to lead the charge in this work. It should be addressed holistically and collaboratively. So as you're having conversations, as you're having discussions about what's to come and what we're doing in developing hybrid options, or whatever your district's in discussion, having discussions about, we must consider these concepts being embedded in that curriculum. When we can embed through curriculum, it is a more powerful impact on all students. So I'm not going to go through them. I sent you these documents. Actually, I gave you the comprehensive list. This is just what has been extracted for virtual settings and counseling. I did want to connect you to some toolkits. There's some great toolkits out there. As I was developing this session for you, I kind of pulled as much as I could to help you, whether you're in elementary, middle, or high school counseling, you can pick there, and just tons and tons of great resources. So please check that out at your leisure. So one of the big issues that we came across initially when we started to move towards this 100% virtual environment was the technology aspects. We had major hiccups in the technology transition of all this. And we think that's so surprising because we have computers, we have, access, we have all these things, but we know the issues have been great and grand in this journey. And so what we have found, or what leaders have found that have been kind of tracking some of this stuff, and Carolyn Stone talks about this in one of her ethics trainings that she did in the last month, that if we're going to reach people, we have to reach them in the way that they respond best. And so parents are going to respond to Facebook. Educators respond better to Twitter, and students actually respond better to Instagram. And I was working with some counselors who created an Instagram in the middle of all this, and were amazed by how the student outreach and connection just tripled by using a different platform. So sometimes we have to think about not only what is best for us, but what is best for the person or the group that we're trying to reach. And so I thought that was really interesting, and it made a lot of sense based off of some of the experience that I've had in these last couple of months. So something to think about. So when we look at creating and managing your virtual counseling program, let me try to move this. Actually, I'm going to minimize it. First and foremost, please hear me clearly. You will follow your school and district policies and procedures. I say this all the time. Although the platforms and the delivery methods have changed, everything else has not. So we continue to follow what we have always done, and we have to defer back to our district policies and procedures. If I give you advice, or you're listening today and it's in opposition of what is happening, please don't go rogue and say, well, Dr. B said this is what we should be doing. That is not the approach. The approach is, let me have a conversation. Maybe I need to have a conversation with someone to talk about what I learned today, and maybe we could be doing this a little bit differently. I know that districts are fearful. Litigation is real. As someone who has sat on the other side of in the courtroom in very sensitive cases and trials, it is a scary, scary thing. So just know sometimes that fear is what keeps leadership from trying something new, or are afraid to just step out of the box just a little bit. You're going to work with your administrator to disseminate information to families about what your programs will look like. You set specific office hours, you clear virtual boundaries. Make sure you're communicating through that school program website regularly. Okay, that is like your face-to-face is that website. That is where people can go and get all the information they would normally get if they were in school, and could pop by and see you in your office. So you've got to develop some kind of system where information is being given, updated often. What we don't want to do is send 100 emails every day with an update or a scholarship or an opportunity, because many of you are on email overload, and so am I. So the more we can restrict things to an actual website or platform, the better off we are. Consider listing emergency and after-hour resources on your website for 24/7 access by students and families. Our kids are up at 2, 3, 4 a.m. in the morning and perusing online, or maybe needing help. And so granted, most of us are generally asleep at that time. We need to arm them with resources that they can get some outreach at whatever time they need. and then develop a protocol for student crisis. And this goes beyond just the crisis counseling. This is the part where we have to think about, if a student tells me they want to hurt themselves, what is our process? What is our virtual process? I guarantee all of you in this session could tell me what your process would be if we were face to face. How many of you can tell me what that exact process would be virtually, and would your answer match other people in your districts? Okay, that's the key. Consistency is the key to really attacking these issues. So yes, I may have a system. I could tell you right now what my system is, but it doesn't count unless everyone's doing it, unless our leadership is on board. So make sure you're having those conversations and developing that protocol. It doesn't have to be very long. It could be, 4 or 5 steps, but that consistency will be key. I always talk about this FERPA versus HIPAA. People seem to be a little confused here. I will tell you that about 99% of your issues are not going to fall in the HIPAA range when we're working with school districts. If I was talking to a medical practice or an LPC counseling practice, that would be different. But because we receive federal funds, or for the most part, we all receive federal funds as public school entities, we don't really align with the HIPAA part of things. Small slithers. We fall under the FERPA. And that's where we still have to protect, student privacy and release of information on a need-to-know basis, and to the student and their family. And so a lot of our issues will be FERPA. I will say almost all of them. There is the slither, but FERPA is where we're going to fall. So some of the questions I've gotten during the last couple of months is my platform appropriate for HIPAA? Well, our platforms are not appropriate for HIPAA, but because we're not HIPAA entities, that's okay. As school counselors, as educators, as long as we're meeting the FERPA guidelines, we're going to be okay. And please, y'all, as we're working through this, make sure you ask me any questions. I want to make sure that I'm answering what you need. I think the scenarios that will happen in another slide or two are going to drive more of that discussion and dialogue. So one of the greatest factors we have with confidentiality in a virtual setting is how in the world do we maintain it? It is really, really tough. I made a statement up here. It is impossible to 100% manage confidentiality in a virtual setting. It is impossible. I'm going to say that again. It is impossible. There are too many other factors that you cannot control. In your face-to-face office with the door closed, you can control that setting and environment. When we go virtual, we cannot control what is happening on the other side of our screen. But there are some things that we can suggest to the students that we're working with is, the use of headphones with a microphone. You can do that as well as the student. So it's not just the student. You're also speaking about very private things in your homes. Your kids are listening, your spouses are listening. That can be a breach of confidentiality, although we know generally your kids aren't going to say anything, or your spouse. But if I'm a student and I'm consulting with you, and your kids are in the background, that may make me conscientious, especially if one goes to my school or is around my age. So those are things we have to be considerate of. Use white noise machines to help prevent others from overhearing private conversations. Identify a separate or private room. So if you're going to have, maybe in your home as the practitioner, as a school counselor, you have a spot where you're going to have sensitive conversations that's away from your spouse, away from your kids, away from everything else that's happening. And that student too. Maybe they have a little nook or corner that they can go to. Maybe they need to go outside. But those are kind of tips and tricks to maintaining that confidentiality. But remember, we're maintaining it. We're not completely able to control all of it. So another question that I have answered probably 50 times in the last 2 months is consent forms. People are really afraid, and I get it, y'all. Again, when we go back and we think about litigation and those types of things, there's fear. We fear for our jobs. We really love what we do, and we don't want to do anything wrong. And so I get it. And trust me, you can ask me 50 more times. And I promise that I will answer this the same way, and will answer you, with a smile. So you're never ever bothering me. But follow your district policies and procedures is going to be number one. You've got to know what was already practiced prior to this change in setting. Did you require permission slips for counseling before COVID-19? If the answer is no, then you do not have to require them now. However, if your district has taken a stance and says, we will now require permission slips, then we must honor what our district says. They have a reason. They have a rationale for why they're requesting that, and it is our job to honor it and not contest it. But in the absence, I say this all the time with all of the trainings that I do, because I do a lot of the law trainings too, is in the absence of a policy or procedure, there is none. And so a decision has to be made. And normally I would then default back to, I didn't have to do it before, I'm not going to do it now. Now we're going to be smart about that. Everyone in this room is highly educated. We know when we may need to get some permission. So if that little voice in your head or any smidgen of a doubt comes to mind in addressing the student, then get that permission. Do it for yourself, even if the district doesn't require it. We know, I have to say, I have saved myself a lot of heartache by anticipating something. It's just a feeling, knowing the family, knowing the student, knowing kind of surrounding circumstances. I was like, I'm just going to be extra careful. Okay, so but that should be few and far in between. We don't need to be extra careful with everyone. You know your community, you know your kids, you know your families. Do what you think is smart. But first of all, follow those district policies and procedures. Everyone's going to get a copy of the PowerPoint. Where can we get a headphone with a microphone for a Mac? Hey, Audrey, I have a really cool one. I don't know if you can see it. I'm not wearing it right now because sometimes I just get tired. But this one is a Mac one. And it goes around my neck. So normally I wear it and you can't see it. And the speaker hits right here at the neck, which is really nice, but it covers your ears and stuff. It's perfect. Anyways, I got it at Target. It was like $40. Okay. Okay, where are you seeking guidance when making decisions for unprecedented issues? Y'all, things are coming up and you're like, well, we've never dealt with this before. Okay, don't take the stance of, I'm gonna make a decision. Collaborate with your colleagues. Ask your lead counselor, ask your co-counselor, ask your principal, get other people on board with you when making decisions in these very, very gray new areas. We are all dealing with that. So anyways, just make sure you're not doing this alone. And if you are, because I know I've got some of my rurals here, I recognize your names. I know you're the only counselor K-12 or you're the only counselor 612. Reach out to me, okay? Let me be your thought partner. And that goes for everyone, whether you're in a 1A or a 6A, reach out to someone and just get a second opinion. I promise I will never steer you wrong. I will also remind you, follow district policies and procedures, but I will give you whatever guidance I can to support you in the different things that you're being attacked with right now. So going back to the kind of the platforms, and I put a list there. We're kind of getting a lot more familiar with the platforms. Platforms are really critical when we look at HIPAA, but not so much when we look at FERPA, as long as we're following all the rules. One of the things that I didn't add in here that I thought of this morning as I was reviewing this, that I heard in one of Carolyn Stone's ethics training, was the concept of make sure you're utilizing your work laptop and your work phone or those Google phone numbers. Try to really keep that line between your personal stuff, and that is just when she was talking about it a couple weeks ago when I was in a training with her, that really resonated with me. Use your district approved computers, laptops, whatever it is. But that's how you keep everything for work in one place instead of blurring the lines. And you know, that's where we get dual issues, and all of a sudden your personal email, you accidentally respond to a student from your personal email instead of your work email. Things get sticky fast. So please, please, please stay on your own work devices as a best practice. Now, if for some reason your district doesn't, you know, everybody doesn't have a laptop or something, you're forced to use your own, well, that's your district process or procedure, then you do what you have to do. But I thought it was really great, a really great point that she made in that training. And so I'm passing that on to you as well. Okay, so now we're going to get to look at these scenarios, and we have 10 for today. And I'm going to actually poll part of your answer for each of these. And then I talk about the rationale, why the answer, and I use that term lightly because, you know, answers can be fluid, why the answer is what it is. So, all right, get ready. Scenario number 1, y'all, most all of these have happened to me in the last 2 months. So, real stories. A student dies of COVID-19, a funeral is held, and students are able to attend the viewing. Only 8 students cycle into the funeral home at a time. A student who attended shares with you later on that they tested positive for COVID-19. What do you do? What is your approach? So let me see if I can pull up my poll, my new poll. All right, I've got our polls for you to weigh in. Let me give you about a minute or so to think this through. Now, my question here says, what do you do first? Okay, what do you do first? About 15 more seconds, and then we're going to talk about this. All right. Okay. Let me share. And let me click on the rationale. All right. So it sounds like we understood that, you know, HIPAA, that medical information is covered under HIPAA. And so, yeah, we didn't get anyone to really to do there, but nothing is definitely not the answer. We definitely have to do something. And our answer would be, you know, contact your administration for guidance. Each district is going to approach how they handle positive students and positive adult students who test positive for COVID-19, adults as well, that process. And if they don't already have one, they are probably in the mix of developing one, because as we return and transition back to school, if we return in the fall, and that happens because the disease will not be eradicated by fall. So when we do have people that test positive, you know, what does that release look like? And so because we don't have a lot of clear answers right now, this is why, you know, we would defer to our administration for guidance. And if no one in your administration can give you an answer, call me and let's see, call me and we will talk this out. The key here is, even though it's a matter of, you know, public health and public concern, and I know that we want to take care of everyone and we want to support and we want to keep everyone safe. We also have to take a minute to think about, you know, do I have the authority to start calling people and letting them know this other student has tested positive? That is private information. We wouldn't tell another student if this student has asthma, or that student is a diabetic, or that student has an emotional disorder. Okay, all of those things are protected under FERPA. So we wouldn't just assume we can reach out because this is scary. And it is so scary to think that, you know, we've got a student or an adult around us who is tested positive for COVID and is amongst us, you know, essentially potentially infecting us. And so I think sometimes our fear overtakes our logical thinking. And so that's why these ethics conversations are really important, so that we are, you know, thinking logically and not from fear. And so, yes, we would meet for guidance, with guidance for our director, with our principal, with someone in leadership. I would imagine that the next step would be we contact the student's parents. We'd like to think that a student isn't lying to us, but y'all, we've seen it happen. We've seen people, you know, out in the news that have said, I have COVID, and are spitting on fruits and vegetables and doing just ridiculous things. I think sometimes kids think it's funny. And so we need to, you know, kind of nip it in the bud and ensure, does the student really have it? Because if they do and the parents don't know, again, that's a safety concern. It's almost like, you know, self-harming behavior. If we don't do anything, the consequences could be grand and great. If your process includes, you know, notifying everyone who attended or in the vicinity, well, then we would go that route. But your process is going to determine what the steps are. But our very first step would be to consult with our administration for guidance. All right, I'm going to stop sharing that one. And I'm going to go to the next scenario. This also, what I have here for this one, there's actually two parts of the ethical standards that help us determine what our course of action is. But this also talks about, you know, sorry, I've got so many things on the screen. The A1, supporting student development and looking at, you know, notifying partners and parents and other people, you know, if a student has a high risk behavior. I know normally we talk about this as, you know, y'all are middle school and high school kids, you know, sexually transmitted diseases and things of that sort. But here's what it says here. Oh, forgive me, there's so many things on my screen right now. I can't see what I'm trying to see. In the absence of state legislation expressly forbidding disclosure, consider the ethical responsibility to provide information to an identified third party with who, by his relationship with the student, is at a high risk of contracting a disease that is commonly known to be communicable and fatal. Okay, we would apply this normally, like I said, we apply this to kind of some of the, you know, AIDS and sexually transmitted diseases, other communicable diseases. COVID-19 would fit in there. We just haven't really thought of that. But so yeah, we do have a duty to let people know. We just want to make sure we know what our process is before we start doing that. So this scenario actually had two rationales. Most of them have just one. Okay, scenario number 2. You have been conducting individual and small group virtual guidance lessons for the last month. One of the student's parents asked for a copy of your recorded session. Your question is, what would you do? Let me launch that poll. There's 2 questions in this poll. Sorry, some of these got cut off, but the first one is lie to the parent and say the sessions were not recorded. That's what it should say there, somehow bled off. Tell the parents that the recordings are considered your private records, therefore you do not have to share them. Determine which records could be shared by taking into consideration other students present in the session. Provide a copy of every educational correspondence you have on file for their student. And then down below, the question is, which law obligates us to share records with parents and legal guardians? And I like Mike's thoughts on this. Why open yourself up to recording? That would be my question too. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and end this poll and see where we landed. So what would we do? It looks like determine which records could be shared by taking in consideration other students present in the session. So absolutely, if you are recording things, okay, now we'll go back to Mike's statement. Okay, that's the consideration. If you're recording things, then this becomes an educational record. Okay, so now parents have the right to ask you for that record and for that information. The only thing that would kind of help you in this case is if it was a group setting and there's other students present, that kind of thing, we would not be able to release information because other students are in that particular video. But if you're doing one-on-ones and you're recording them, a parent has every right to ask for that. And the law that dictates that right is FERPA. And so, Mike, you're right. Why open yourself up to recording? You know, Tammy, you know, we've been directed not to record sessions for this reason. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, again, district policies and procedures are what drive what you're doing in this aspect. But if you are just by yourself thinking, oh, I want to record this session because you want to go back and review it, y'all really think again, because that now has become an educational record and you have to meet all of the storage requirements set by records laws. So if you have those in your possession, you need to store them somewhere formally. Get with your records person. The state mandated several years ago, I want to say like 10 years ago, that a records person be designated in the district as a records officer. They probably have 20 other jobs too, but they're a records officer as well, and they tell you how you must store and how long you must store those student records. So let me, okay. So I also have given you the rationale here. I'm not going to go real deep in the rationale. Remember, I've told you to review your standards, but when you go back and look at this again, I have given you where in the standards it tells you the language to use to justify what you're doing. Okay, so this is an agree or disagree. Let me get this one going. All right, Ms. Salyers, the counselor, administered a risk assessment to a student who has been referred by a teacher for suicidal ideation, recorded in a journal. The risk assessment revealed a low risk, but she called the parents to review the plan they developed and acknowledge the assessment. In talking to the parents, she reported that she had done a risk assessment because of a teacher referral. She urged the parents to be vigilant, watching for signs of withdrawal, depression, and prepared to act by providing professional counseling and or getting hospitalization if signs occur. She indicated that though the assessment revealed a low risk, students often minimize risk, so we have to realize the risk of harm is still present. Okay, take a few seconds to answer that poll. I'll keep it up about 15 more seconds. Answer choice 1 says disagree. So this is agree or disagree. Disagree, Ms. Salyers should prioritize action only if risk assessment reveals a middle or high risk. Disagree, Ms. Salyers has too many things to do. She should just file a record with the low risk assessment. Number 3, agree Ms. Salyer's communication with parents is critical no matter the level of risk. Number 4, agree Ms. Salyer's findings of a low risk means the student is depressed. All right, I think most of us, I'm gonna go ahead and end that poll and share the results. Most of us, all of us that responded agreed that this is the right course of action. No matter if it's a low, medium, or high, we have a duty to report and provide resources and support. I do use risk assessments, but when I train on risk assessments, I always talk about how they are one piece, one small piece of all the data that we bring together to support a student. It cannot be the end-all be-all solution. And we know, that kids don't always give us all the information. So maybe they're coming up as a low risk, but they really have that plan, and they really have things going on, but they know when we're checking them and asking questions, they know they're very smart. And so they could be modifying their answers. And so every risk is to be taken seriously. And I know this gets tricky when we have what I call our frequent flyers. When I was in district, I had kiddos, kind of some of them ED kiddos, that every day it was a cry for, an outcry. But you know what? Every day I called the parent. Every day I documented. Maybe we didn't send them home every single day and every single time because, at that point, we can't keep kids out of their educational placement, and there's a whole lot of rules that we have to abide by, especially with our ED and special ed kiddos. But every time an outcry was made, it was taken seriously. And so I remind you, virtual, face-to-face, every risk is taken extremely seriously, low, medium, or high. All right. And there's our information. Okay. A teacher is meeting with her students virtually and notices a crying baby in the background. During the 30-minute lesson, no one ever comes to attend the baby. What guidance would we provide the teacher? All right, I'm going to go ahead and end our poll, share our results. All right, so nobody chose. Sometimes babies cry, and that's okay. That is true, but we don't know all of the mitigating circumstances to say this is just a baby crying and that's it. We need to dig a little bit deeper. If she believes the situation shows neglect, then she should file a CPS report. And then we also she should call the family and find out if they need any type of support. Y'all, this is where it gets a little gray and tricky because we can actually guide both ways, right? If there's any doubt, no matter what she saw, if there's any doubt in her mind or any belief that there is some kind of neglect or an issue, even if it's just an inclination of some sort, file a CPS report. Sometimes all I had was a hunch. Sometimes I just saw something, thought something, felt something. No one's going to get in trouble for filing a CPS report. If anything, we could be saving a life. And so I was always very free with my reporting. But I also feel that at times, we call that family and find out if they need any type of support. Right now, there's a lot going on. People don't have jobs. People don't have food. The stress is incredible. And so, it is possible that parent has checked out for 30 minutes because they were going to go crazy being in that room one more minute. So it's, not all of these have a right or wrong answer. And that's the problem with ethics sometimes, is that we want a yes or no, we want a black and white, and ethics is all the gray in between. So we would advise that teacher, I think the very first thing we would do is advise her that if she believes it showed neglect, remember, she's the one who saw it happen. She saw everything else in the background. We didn't get to see that, so we can't make an opinion, but to file that CPS report. And then I'm not quite sure if I want the teacher reaching out and asking for support. If they have a relationship, absolutely. Check in with that family, but that may be something that the counselor needs to take. Y'all, these are conversations, icky conversations that we have had before. They're uncomfortable and we know it, but we are trained and have a lot of practice with this. So I think both of those answers could be correct. It just depends on what they saw. And this is just like face-to-face child abuse and things. If we think kid comes dirty to school, or smelly shirt, or same shirt for 5 days, it's all of that, again, just in the virtual setting. Absolutely, Mike. When in doubt, call the parent and talk first. Yes, we want to be partners with parents. Absolutely. But if there's something that looked way wrong, way wrong, and it was more than the baby crying, the child is also, disheveled, laundry everywhere, it looks like, a hoarding situation, when it's very, eye-opening like that, then I think we have to go one direction. But if it's your first interaction where you've noticed something negative, you're like, let me call and have a conversation. Absolutely, there is that human element, and it's very difficult to have those calls, but absolutely, please feel free to call. You're going to know your people, your parents, your community better, and so you've got to do what's best for them, and based off the relationships you have. Thanks, Mike. All right, let's see. And then there is, that's just our child abuse reporting. Okay. Scenario 5, you are having trouble sleeping and decide to check your email. It's 2 a.m. and you received an email at midnight from a student saying they wanted to hurt themselves. Oh, y'all, this has happened to me way too many times. Let's launch this poll. How quickly, okay, the question is, how quickly must you respond? I've launched the poll. It says immediately. There's no time to waste. You have 24 hours to respond, so there is no rush. Within a reasonable amount of time, but generally as soon as possible, after you have spoken to your administrator. And this one's real, it can be real tricky. Real tricky. All right, about 5 more seconds. All right, I'm going to end our poll, share our results. And with this one, I'm going to show you something, and then we're going to talk about it. So let me. All right, so most of you are saying immediately, there's no time to waste. Now that concept is correct in many ways, in the sense that yes, but when was this email sent? What has happened since then? What are you going to be able to do at 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning? But absolutely, if you want to call the police department, if you want to, take, absolutely, that is your right. That is an appropriate ethical response. You have 24 hours to respond. There is no rush. That is not. Even though we do have some time, this is not like a child abuse report. Okay, we have an active situation within a reasonable amount of time, but generally as soon as possible. Okay, I lean towards the first and the third because a reasonable amount of time. If we look at our ethics, remember, our ethics drives our decision making. Here we have serious and foreseeable harm, A.9, and I've highlighted a statement here. Inform parent, guardians, and or appropriate authorities when a student poses a serious and foreseeable risk of harm to self or others. When feasible, this is to be done after careful deliberation and consultation with other appropriate professionals. Okay, that's what our ethics say. So yes, can I do this immediately? Absolutely. But do I have some time as well to make a decision after consulting a little bit more? Yes, too. Okay, and this is how you are protected. I know that goes beyond everything that we believe in our soul because we want to react quickly, but I'm telling you, although we should react quickly, if you need to collaborate with someone else, it is possible. Okay, because think about it. Yes, Claudia is saying you don't open your email till the morning. Okay, what's the difference between that 2 a.m. email and that 7 a.m. email? You know, we don't know, and we'll go crazy with the unknowns. I have had teachers call me at 2 a.m. You know, wanting to work through this, and it's tough. Thankfully, I hear the phone, but I don't always. And so, again, what does our ethics say? We do have some latitude and flexibility in timing. Okay. Can you go immediately? Absolutely. But can you wait a little bit? All right. 24 hours is stretching it, even though there's no timing, but just be considerate of that. All right, let's look at this next. Oh, this one's my favorite. Not my favorite, but it's one I've dealt with so many times. A student tells me she thinks she's pregnant. All right, let me launch this poll. All right, so what do we do here? What do we do first? That's what this one says. What do you do first? We share gender reveal party ideas. We learn the details surrounding the pregnancy. We find out how old the baby's father is. We find out if her parents know. Offer to share the news with her parents and his parents. All right, I'm gonna, for the sake of time, I'm gonna go ahead and end our poll and share our results. All right, y'all, I would say find out if her parents know would be the best course of action. Now, you may learn the details surrounding the pregnancy around the same time that you're getting all of this, so either one of those could be correct, but we've gotta know, do her parents or legal guardian know? Because that's going to define every next step after that. Then we start getting some details, and I always have asked the age, or maybe not directly the age, because you kind of have to be a little indirect when getting some of these answers, but you know, oh, is the baby's daddy a student here? Okay, that's one of my tricky ways to find out how old this is, because that's a whole other issue when we're looking at age gaps and things like that. But definitely step one, do the parents know? And we have to make a plan for how to either giving her the opportunity to talk to her parents, you talking to the parents, or having a whole meeting all together to discuss this. So again, these are icky and tricky and some of the worst conversations I have to have with parents, but we got to make sure parents know, because it's a foreseeable harm to self and others, because there's a baby, there's someone else that we have to take into consideration. Okay, you've been providing weekly virtual check-ins on several students. A student reports to their parent that they felt the counselor was not as friendly as usual. The parent calls the counselor to discuss their student's concern. All right, let's launch that next poll. Okay, how would you handle this situation? I'm gonna give you about 30 seconds to respond. Remind the parent you have 1,100 students in your caseload. Thank the parent for the feedback. Discuss with the parent that virtual counseling may not always come across exactly like face-to-face. Tell the parent you will smile more next time. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and end our poll and share our results. All right, so in the release of our ASCA ethical guidance, they discuss the fact that we should be telling families on the front end, students and parents, that the virtual experience does not always come off like the face-to-face. And there is actually an ethical standard for it here, which is F, because cues, body language, all of that changes in a virtual setting. So that's really the answer. Yes, we want to thank the parent for their feedback, but also if we haven't done this, if we haven't addressed this piece of it, we should go back and look at that, because that could help us getting some of these feedback conversations from families, which we appreciate, but many times it's because of the platform. All right, I know we're getting close to time, so a couple more minutes, and I'll go over maybe one or two more scenarios. A student reveals to you that they no longer want to live with their custodial parent. They say their mother is too strict and they never can get along. They want to live with their father and have asked for your help in researching how they can switch which parent they live with. All right, how do you approach this situation? Encourage the student to talk to their mother about their feelings. Encourage the student to talk to their father about what they want. You help them do some online searches regarding custody changes. You affirm their feelings and agree the father would be the better placement. Okay, I'm going to end this poll. I'm going to share our results. All right, yes, encourage the student to talk to their mother about their feelings, okay? They need to talk to that custodial parent. That doesn't mean they can't talk to their father about it, but that is the person they're having the issues with. We have to remember that we don't take sides. We are not here, whether they're 17 or not, we are not here to pick sides. We're here to just affirm feelings and help collaborate with the family to have some crucial discussions. Okay, I think I'm going to get to one more. There are only 10 in this one, but I do want to hit this one before we end. And if you want to hang on, I'll keep going. There's only one more. Obviously, I know you have to get off and get to other sessions, but there's only one more scenario after this one. My principal and central office supervisor want to know the names of all the students I report to CPS for possible abuse or neglect. I'm going to launch that poll. I'm only going to keep it up about 30 seconds. Are you required to tell them? No, I can remain anonymous, but best practice is to follow your district policies and procedures. No, I follow the law and not my district's request. Yes, they are my supervisors and I could be written up if I don't. Yes, I have no anonymity. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end our poll, share our results. Okay, legally, you don't have to. Okay, so are you going to lose your job or get in trouble? No, legally, they can't do that. But it is best practice to include your district, to follow your district policies and procedures. Y'all, it just makes a better working relationship to honor that. But are you required every single time? No. But if we want to maintain that positive working experience, you know, it's not a bad idea. I always warned my administrators when something big was happening. They deserve to know. Okay, scenario number 10, last one. I live in a small rural community. I have my LPC and run a private practice after school hours. Does it create a dual relationship if I see current students in my private practice? What do you think? What you do during the evening has no bearing on your ability to see students as clients. You should proceed with extreme caution to ensure you are not creating a dual relationship. It's a small town, so it probably happens often and is not a big deal. As an LPC, you can practice therapy with anybody as long as it's not during the time you're supporting your first job. All right, so I'm going to share this. You should proceed with extreme caution to ensure you are not creating a dual relationship. Absolutely. Y'all, dual relationships are really critical and easy. They happen so easily. It doesn't always have to be an inappropriate relationship, but you know, if you're the LPC and you've got students, you know, it could be seen as I'm recruiting from my day job for my night job, and that's where you can have some dual relationship issues. So definitely proceed with caution to make sure you're not creating that type of relationship. And I say that because in the rural areas, there's not a lot of LPCs, so it can be challenging to address that. What would that look like after school is over and you no longer have that student next school year? I think, Katrina, that definitely is something that would be different. We are now, you know, we've stopped this relationship. They've moved on, and now we're going to see them in that way. I think that would work. Again, you always just want to proceed with extreme caution. We don't want to muddy the waters, and we don't want anyone saying, you know, you're recruiting from your day job, and that's where we can get in trouble. So absolutely, once that relationship is severed, then it no longer becomes dual. So just proceed with caution. All right, I'm going to exit that. These are my resources that I pulled all of our answers and used to develop some of the scenarios, although most of them were from my personal experience. So this is my contact information. Thank you everyone who attended today. I hope this was what you were hoping for. It was a, you know, kind of quick ethics review. You'll get an hour and a half for today's session, and Presley will work on that attendance. And I will send the recording, the PowerPoint, and post it on my website as well. I'll stay on the line for any last minute questions. Thank you for bearing with me an extra couple of minutes. I look forward to seeing you at other events soon. Don't forget, on Friday, we have our yoga session and self-care. So if you haven't signed up for that, go ahead and get signed up. It's going to be a great session. All right, everyone, I'll talk to you soon, and I'll stay on for any questions.
Hey, Sandy, it's Heather Huffay